Welcome to Gabbin with Gavin.
Gavin Clark is one of the co-owners of Vintage 905 and joins us. Hello, Gavin.
Gavin Clark has been selling vintage clothing in downtown Whitby for over 3 years.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is episode 16 of the Gabbin with Gavin podcast. It's a very special episode today. We've got a couple of firsts here. First off, I'm joined for the first time by my co-host. He's my business partner at Vintage 905. Welcome, Mikey Cameron, everybody.
Thanks for having me on today. This should be fun.
Yeah, it should be a good time. Hey, buddy, you excited?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Should be fun. We got a special guest joining us here in 1990 Studios.
Yeah.
Alex Wong is joining the podcast. Alex is a feature writer. He's a published author. His works appeared in GQ, Complex, The New Yorker. He is the co-host producer of the Raptors Show with Will Liu. And his newest book we've got right over our shoulder here, Cover Story. It's the journey through the NBA through the magazine covers that really tell the stories. So, Alex, thanks a lot for joining us.
Oh, man. Thank you so much, Gavin. Thank you, Mike. Mike, I heard this is your first time co-hosting with Gavin. Is this what's happening right
It's
now?
my first time, yeah.
Special guest. Had a special guest, so you had to come join us.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I
We're
appreciate
making
that.
history here today.
No, but for real, appreciate you guys having me on. Obviously, had a chance to finally check out Vintage 905, the store in person, and obviously been following the store, and wrote a story a little while back for the Toronto Star on you guys, and really excited to do this, man.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for joining us. It is a pleasure having you in. We're both huge Raptors fans. You're just an encyclopedia of basketball knowledge. So we're really excited to pick your brain. And you touched on that story there. I'd like to just say thank you off the top for kind of spreading the word about our shop, Vintage 905. And we were talking a little bit before, and I mentioned that people tell us all the time.
Yeah.
They read that article, and they saw us in the paper. And it's really cool, man. So thank you.
No, I appreciate it, but I know you guys don't need my help. I see Nikhil Alexander-Walker.
Yeah.
I see O'Shea Brissett. I see Boy Wonder coming through. So
Hey, yeah, we do what we can, man. Thank you. Very cool. So I thought maybe we'd start with another first off the top. Never done this on the podcast before, but for joining us today, we actually have a gift for you.
Oh wow, okay, wow. I thought the gift was just coming here and recording with you guys.
We got in the chastity bag. Shout out Brandon, episode 13 guest. We have got from Vintage 905.
Oh come on, really?
The
Man,
Vintage
the
Flow
Toronto sweat.
93.5 t-shirt.
You guys made me shop at the store first and then give me the gift. No, wow. So this is a Flow 93.5 T-shirt, which I actually messaged Gavin about. I think last week, because I'm always following Vintage 905 on Instagram, and you guys post great vintage wrestling tees, sports tees, and obviously these kinds of local tees that really connect with me. So I truly do appreciate this. I really do appreciate this.
That's awesome, man. Well, I mean,
you guys got a fitting room. I might gotta just change into that right now. Yeah.
we'll be right back, everybody. No, that's awesome. I figured as a broadcaster, as the
No,
co-host.
this is
perfect for
this
you.
is what they call in the biz as a grail for me. So this is my grail right
Yeah.
now. I really appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome. Why don't we transition from there? Let's talk a little bit about vintage. You're a fashion guy. You're a connoisseur of vintage.
Oh, I love this. Yeah.
How long? Like, what? Could you kind of describe your style? Where do you shop? What do you look for? Like,
Yeah, I think my style is, I guess with everyone else, it evolves, right? It changes over time and things of that nature. And, just for context, like I'm 37. So, I grew up as a kid in the 90s, and it's such a wild thing to me. And I don't know if you two feel that way because you obviously run this store and are in the vintage business. It's wild to me that 90s vintage is just this hugely popular thing. Growing up, I thought all the clothes that came out that I saw at the malls were so tacky. Like, you tell me about like, X-Men t-shirts or, Marvel t-shirts. Growing up, those were so accessible anywhere, right? You could have picked those up anywhere you wanted, at the malls, at different stores. And now I see them and, you guys are everybody in the world charging like, hundreds of dollars for it. Yeah. And I just can't believe it. But I'm very happy about that in terms of people starting to appreciate the 90s. Mm-hmm. And we talk about wrestling. Like growing up, I know, Gavin, you're a huge wrestling fan. And so was I, right? Like, I remember being at school and getting in trouble because I was doing the DX cross chop during like recess. And, you know, the principal would talk to me and say that this was inappropriate for a 7th grader. So going back to your question though, in terms of the style, you know, I think vintage is a huge part of, you know, what I like to wear. And, you know, the thing I love about vintage, especially when it comes to graphic tees, which is a big passion of mine, is I think it really just speaks to your personality. You know, what you wear kind of conveys your interests. Or a lot of times it's a great just icebreaker. Like I remember,
Definitely.
I think a few years ago, I went to round 2 in New York and I picked up this Marty Jannetty vintage tee. And it's one of those, and you guys know the feeling when you're just browsing the racks and you come across a tee. First of all, you know, the first thing you think of is, this better be in my size. Like this better be in my size. Like I wear like a large XL. I'm like, yo, this better not be a small medium. And it was like for $40. And it was just a tee that I'd never seen before, right? A Marty Jannetty. I remember wearing that back in Toronto here on the subway, and just people would just approach me and just have conversations about it, right? Just point at the t-shirt. And I think that is really a cool thing, because I think we live in probably a society now, especially with social media, where it's a very kind of like, look at me, right? Like, look at me, look what I picked up, you know, look at what I'm wearing. And I value more just people picking up clothes that mean something to them, right? Like there has to be a personal meaning. Like I'm sure for you, Mike, like for you, Gavin, too, like when you have that one wrestling tee that you absolutely like, right? And for you, Mike, like when you have that one vintage good that you really need to have, I think it just speaks to your personality. So yeah, I think my style, you know, it's a lot of vintage stuff. You know, I try to mix in some like more like maybe more just adult, you know, I try to dress like, you know, my mom's always like, you know, why you still dress like you were when you were 16? And I was like, Mom, you just wouldn't get it. You know, that's the style right now. You know, if I look like how I looked like 20 years ago, I'll really fit in with the kids. So I think it's a bit of like high-low, like, you know, a bit of high-low, you know, like you can have your vintage goods, you can have your like maybe more high-end goods, and then mix in a little bit of, you know, different pieces here and there. So I think that's how I would describe my style.
That's awesome, man. I think nostalgia is a very powerful drug. Like it is the memory trip. Like, do you think being involved with the NBA, such a fashionable league, all the tunnel walks, like all the league fits, do you think that is a part of what it maybe makes it?
For sure.
Yeah.
But the thing I always tell people is, you know, there's a reason why the clothes look good on those guys, because they are the you know, best physical shapes, the best physical bodies like in the world, right? So like I always tell my friends like, hey, like, I know you're trying to pull off that look that maybe, like, you know, like Devin Booker or Serge Ibaka, or, you know, we've seen, like, the Kyle Kuzma long sweater that he was wearing the other day, right? Like, I'm going to tell you straight up, Gavin, look you in the eye right now. You can't pull that off, all right? Like, you can't pull that off. I respect you a lot, but this is what I tell people. I think it's good to be inspired, but when it comes to style and when it comes to vintage and stuff, like, find out what works for you, like personally, right? Because I think at the end of the day, your style has to reflect who you are and your personality.
Absolutely. I think the situation to like Kyle Kuzma going down the tunnel in the big Raph Simmons sweater is a little different than me wearing it over to the Pearson pub or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you can though. You can though.
It is crazy to see too. Like we obviously follow League Fits. We've been featured in it a few times. Like, but seeing the amount of like these NBA players who just have like so much money, whereas before maybe like 10 years ago, or maybe even as little back as 5, they're all wearing just designer. And now like almost like 2 out of 3 pictures or posts, they're wearing some sort of vintage clothing in it. And it's cool to see it like.
No, it's so, I think it's so amazing because vintage has become this high-end item, right? And, you know I name dropped Nikhil earlier, O'Shea and these guys. And it's really cool. Like even when I was doing the story on you guys for the Star, like just being able to speak to you, Gavin, and hear about these stories and hear about how excited these guys are, right? To know kind of the products that you're bringing in. And I know you told me too, like you'll often get a lot of DMs maybe from people out of nowhere that they're searching for that one particular piece, right? And, you know, I think whether you're a $1 million athlete or, you know, you're someone like me or just a regular civilian walking off the street, like we all have that same shared interests and we all have that same passion for nostalgia. But what's interesting to me too is like a lot of these younger guys, like Nikhil wasn't around in the 90s, you know, like I'm not trying to call these guys out, but it's also cool that they are having an appreciation for this, right? Like for me, it's seeing things that I saw growing up come back in style. For Nikhil, it's showing an appreciation to an era that he didn't grow up in.
No, that's great. I do agree with you completely. Like vintage, it really is. It is making the moves in the NBA. It's cool to see. It is wild when you mentioned Nikhil, like he's a younger guy, and he, like you said, he didn't grow up during some of this, and it's cool to see. We have kids that'll come in, maybe pick up, they'll see a shirt and say, "This is a cool Metallica t-shirt." I don't know the band that well, but then they go and they'll go and hit Spotify, learn music. It's cool. Yeah. It's cool to connect the generations. Like,
yeah, it's almost like an education process for them too, right? Like this T-shirt becomes a gateway drug in a way for you to discover a band or discover a wrestler, discover a TV show or a movie or things like that. Like I think one of my favorite personal vintage pickups this year, I bought this Speed hat. You know, Speed's one of my favorite movies. You know,
everybody hold on!
Keanu Reeves, shout outs to the legend.
Yep.
Shout outs to the GOAT. And like Speed growing up was just this movie that was on TV all the time. And I was just obsessed with it. Like I would watch it all the time. It just became one of those things where it went from being ironically my favorite movie to just, I guess, my favorite movie, actually. So being able to find a hat like that, like that's a hat that I wear all the time. And I don't know if you guys, like I'm sure you guys have closets that are way bigger than mine in terms of collection. And there are just certain pieces that just connect with you more, right?
Yes.
Certain pieces that you just always go back to. And, you know, for me, it's like a Speed hat or, you know, we talk about that Marty Jannetty shirt. Like those things, they really connect with me.
I love the authenticity. I mean, $5,000 rap tees are amazing. But if it's not your favorite artist, if it's not, you know, they're like a Speed hat, something that really connects to you, that's the most important thing, is staying true to yourself when it comes to style, wearing things that you like, stuff that you can actually enjoy. And like, I think that's helped us out with the stores. Like we try to pack it with things that we find cool. And like, we're not just jumping like trend to trend, whatever's in right now. I think just staying authentic and just making things that you find cool is what the authenticity, like, you know, enjoying wrestling tees and that people pick up on that. Like people can tell you really enjoy it, and it's not just like, oh, I know that these are going for a lot right now, so we're trying to get them in. And
yeah, that's a big difference to me between, because like, to be honest, like there's just a lot of like clout chasing that happens, right? Like how do I get the most expensive tee, the most coveted tee, and I just want to wear it because people are gonna know that I paid this certain amount for it, right? Which I think strips away what really is important.
Exactly.
About
it
like
defeats the purpose of vintage.
Like
it's about having that piece that no one has.
Exactly.
Right?
And trust me, like I think that is part of the game. Like that is part of what makes vintage great, because you are searching for those personal grails. And I'm not above like paying what I would say like too much for something that I want, right? Like I understand how the market works. And I think an example, like I think there was this Instagram account that I follow who posts vintage rap tees. And the other day, this account posted a bunch of size XL tees, like in my size, of like 90s rap tees. And there was this Locks tee of, you know, and obviously I know because of the versus that the Locks did with Dipset, like the Locks are just this mainstream thing now, which again, going back to like 90s things that I consume, like I love the Locks, right? Like I love Jadakiss, I love Styles P, and to see him have that performance at Madison Square Garden, now he's suddenly on Kanye's new album, GQ's doing a whole interview with the group. Anyways, like I saw that tee and I was like, I need to have it. And the way he tagged the post was, he said, I'm selling these at really great prices, right? So I'm like, all right, let me shoot my shot, you know, ask him, hey, if it's still available. He comes back and tells me that the tee's $900. So like, fair, I get it. Like the market is what it is, and that's dictating the prices right now. But, you know, in my mind, I was like, all right, if it was like 400 even, or even 500, I might think about it, because I know that's going to go in my pile with that Speed hat, right? Yeah. With that Marty Jannetty shirt. And that's a shirt that I'm going to be able to wear very proudly. But sometimes you got to draw the line. Sometimes you got to draw the line. So.
Anybody tuning in who's not familiar with the vintage world, that wasn't a typo or anything. That great deal was
That is good. That's not a bad deal either.
No.
US.
Let's be clear here. Mike and Gavin did not flinch at all. They were like,
I was
Alex,
like, who?
Yeah, they're like
I'll grab
Alex.
that.
They're like, Alex, you idiot. You had the steal of the century. And now you're telling us how to spend our money.
Yeah, it must be mind blowing for people who don't, or just like who happen to just jump into this podcast at that moment. It's $900 for a used T-shirt is a great price. It's a crazy.
No, it is, right. And I always think about my parents. I know my parents probably not listening to this. I mean, Mom, if you are, like, just please turn this off because this is the least expensive part of the conversation right now. But like, I think there's just a generation or people who might not be into vintage. Like it is like a sticker shock in a way, right? Like knowing how valuable things are. But on the flip side, maybe run to your attic, run to your basement, things that you've had in your collection. People probably have really valuable goods in where they live right now that they're completely not aware of.
We try to pick everyone. Oh, if people come in with their parents, I try to go for a little walk with the parents around the shop. Say, listen, like show them kind of like what the prices go for. Does your brother, does your mom, does your dad? If you have any of this stuff, we paid for a lot of people's probably vacations or dinners out just from them bringing in T-shirts that they were either going to donate. They've told us, oh, we're just going to bring them to the Salvation Army. We said, bring them in here and like,
let's price it out,
give them
right?
some money.
Yeah,
Give their
let's
kids some
price it
money.
out.
We get the kids now going to the thrift stores or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're making money that way by going out, finding that stuff, and then bringing it into us. And they have a little job just doing.
We got our little shooters out there.
Yeah, we get kids that come and go every day and bring.
No, you guys got
Make
your own
money.
corner boys.
Yeah,
man.
man.
I'm thinking about the wire right now. You guys just got people at every
Exactly,
corner
yeah.
right now. No, but like even I see like Gavin, I know he's wearing a vintage Raptors hat right now. And I mean, Raptors vintage goods. I mean, you guys probably have seen like the interest in just the dyno, right? Like the interest in just vintage Raptors, especially because they won the championship in 2019.
Championship season changed everything.
It has just completely shot up. Like I remember a time when people wouldn't want to be seen with a dyno. They just wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like it represented a part of an era of the franchise that people just wanted to forget because they weren't good.
Well, I honestly remember, you can probably attest to this too, being not in the city, being a little bit outside of it. We got made fun of for being Raptors fans. It's like, it's a Leafs fans, and it's like that's all that was.
I had that hat
Toronto
like
was a
when I
hockey
was
town.
in elementary school, and I remember getting picked on. They're
Yeah.
like, you're wearing a purple hat. You're
Yeah,
Raptors.
you're Barney the dinosaur.
Who watches the Raptors? They suck.
Yeah, and I think it's so amazing, as someone myself who grew up, a Raptors fan from day one, from the 95 season, to see how much, not just the city of Toronto, but like you mentioned, like, cities across Canada, right? Like the entire country rallied around them during the championship and, tying it back to the vintage. It's like now when you wear an old Raptors piece, there's a sense of pride to it, right?
Yes.
There's almost like whether you just picked it up from a vintage store or it's something that you had sitting in your closet from back in the day, it almost forms like a connection. Like it goes back to the connection, right? It's like, yeah, like I was there during those years when, kids picked on me and, purple and,
Dark days.
in the dark days. And now it's like, and I know, I'm sure we'll talk about it. Like, the Raptors are, kind of building it back up again, but now there's just such a sense of pride. It's so cool. That was the coolest part of the championship run for me, was just walking around the city and seeing so much Raptors merch. I'd never seen it. Like, I don't know how it was, whether in Whitby or in Peterborough and all these other places. And it's like,
Everywhere.
yeah, I couldn't believe it, right? And like you mentioned, like we all know Toronto's a hockey town and we all know like the Leafs are still king. But I mean, to see that outpouring of support and pride about the Raptors, like I think it hits different when you've been following the team.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they're incredible. I'm getting chills just thinking about that championship
Where
run again.
where were you that night? Like the final game?
Yeah, so I was actually home watching in my condo downtown. And the funny thing was, for people that don't know, obviously I work in sports media. And, CBC had actually asked that if the Raptors had won Game 6 that night against Golden State in Oakland, they wanted me to just come record a radio hit at 2 a.m. So it was a little bit conflicting for me because I was like, I hope they win because I definitely hope they win. Because I'm not trying to see a game 7 at home because that would make me really nervous against Steph Curry and the Warriors. But I was also like, man, if they win, I guess I gotta run over to the CBC building like in 2 hours while I'm like on the biggest adrenaline rush of my life. But I'm sure you guys remember like the final seconds of that game was just so nerve-wracking, right? Like I had people texting me, like I was screaming at the TV when Danny Green threw the ball away.
Here comes the double team. Leonard still in the backcourt, throws it ahead to Green. Green surrounded by Draymond Green and throws it away! Throws it away!
Right? You remember this, right?
God.
You
We
remember
were
this?
down there.
Yeah,
we were
I'm
down
having
at
flashbacks.
the Scotiabank.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember because I live pretty close to the Rogers Center, and I remember when I left to do my radio hit, like it usually is a 5-minute walk to the CBC building. It's literally right next door. Took me about 20 minutes to get there because the streets were packed, right? Cars were honking everywhere. Guys were carrying plants. I don't even know why.
Where's the plant, man? Where'd you get that?
It's a housewarming gift for Kawhi.
It was just pure chaos, but it was good chaos though.
It was.
Like it was just such
was
joy,
beautiful,
right? And
yeah.
like I wasn't old enough to partake in the parades when the Blue Jays won at the back-to-back World Series 92-93. So this was really my first time fully experiencing this, and it was just so remarkable. It was so
Yeah.
remarkable.
And like you said, it hits different for somebody like you who's been through the real thick and thin.
Yeah.
A long time
No,
supporter.
and I get to have this championship, and we all get to have this championship, and we get to cherish it. Hopefully, they win another
Hopefully
one
back-
in
yeah.
our lifetime, but we all know how hard it is.
Of
We all
course.
know how hard it is.
And we got that one. We got that one. I want to keep. See, we're transitioning into the Raptors. I do want to keep going on that. Before we do, you were talking to the Speed Hat. Any love for Speed 2?
Oh
Speed
man,
2
cruise control, cruise control. I did see a Speed 2 cruise control. Speaking of tank tops, I did see a Speed 2 cruise control tank top on eBay a while back. And this is one of those things I think I was telling you before we started recording, Gavin. Sometimes I got to tell myself, it's a really cool piece, but are you gonna wear it?
Yeah.
Are you gonna wear it, or are you just gonna buy it? And that's really all the thrill that you can get from it. So that was one of those situations where I had to remind myself. And I'm sure Mike's looking at me right now being like, once again, idiot move for not picking that grail piece up.
We actually we had a pretty
had a
we had a Speed
the
2
tee.
shirt in here, the T-shirt XL. So
Ah, man.
we'll keep an eye out because now
Okay,
that
please
we know,
don't ever tell me these things because it just sends
and
me on
it's
tilt.
sat here for so long. Dude.
Oh my God, the lack of appreciation
I
from the
know.
people of Whitby. I'm calling out Whitby right
Yep.
now.
Hey, when you get a classic film and you get a T-shirt for it, it's got to go.
Yeah, it's gotta go.
But that's the great thing about vintage, right? Like that piece might not speak to someone else, but it might speak to someone like me, right?
Yes.
And when it hits that sweet spot, like I think that's like so amazing.
But that's kind of like we were talking earlier about how they connect in the generations and that. I think like if I was to see you pick up a Speed shirt and I didn't know them and you're freaking out, this is my favorite shirt, my favorite hat, like I'd be like, well, why does this guy like? What's this movie this guy likes so much? You know? And it is cool to see like if somebody knows that's your favorite hat you're wearing all the time. I bet you somebody's seen that and said, what is this guy's rocking?
No,
I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, I've started so many conversations
Yeah.
just from the things that I wear. And,
Hot
and
quiz,
again,
hot shot.
yeah, no, everybody. So I've worn this to Sportsnet like several times. I have gotten that quote many times. So you're the 11th person this month to say that to me. But I love that. I honestly love that part of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh man, that's so cool. You do have a great history with cool vintage pieces, man. You're always posting promo for the 590 show, and
Yeah.
it's always pictures of you. And if you had the same gear and your current size right now, you've got some vintage hits, man. The Leafs block color cap, the big Raptors logo.
I have
dyed
so
up.
many great
Yeah.
pieces. And the unfortunate thing, so one of the things I did, so I was a huge hip hop fan growing up, which I feel like anybody growing up in the 90s, like even if you weren't into hip hop, like you had no choice because it was just part of your life, right? Like it just exploded in the 90s. I used to, when I bought CDs, I used to take out the booklets, and I'm sure you guys remember in the booklets you could order merch.
Oh yeah.
Like I remember when I bought like Raucous Records, like Sound Bombing, and they would be like, "Hey, mail this in with whatever money, and we'll send you a hoodie." Right?
Yep.
I had all of that stuff, and unfortunately, when my parents moved, some things were thrown out. So I like to tell people, I can see the pain in Gavin and Mike's eyes right now. Unfortunately, like I almost feel like this whole chase of vintage now for me is trying to like recover from just, you know, the trauma of that. So
And try and like get them all back, all the pieces
oh,
that you have.
man, I remember the Jay-Z albums. Like I used to have all that Jay-Z merch, and now I see, like I mentioned, now Locks t-shirts are $900 and you guys aren't even flinching. I'm like, man, Dad, you threw away
You
threw
got to
away
show
my
your
trust
parents
fund.
that. You got to show your parents what they're worth now and show them what they threw at.
No, my parents threw away my entire trust fund. Yeah, I'm so upset right now. No, but I think, again, it just goes back to like, honestly, I know I've said this many times, but I'm so blown away that the younger generation is consuming all of this now.
Yeah, it's cool to see it. It's cool to see them picking up on cool things, man.
We still get the young kids in high school, early in high school, that are coming in saying Led Zeppelin's their favorite band, or and
Do you ask them? Do you ask them though? Like, do you ask them like, yo,
and-
top 5 songs? Like, you got
Name
test
every Led Zeppelin song ever.
yeah. I mean, but like you can tell these kids, like they actually, with kids coming in and buying VHS tapes, kids coming in and buying cassette tapes,
Right.
And they're listening to it because they're seeing this. I think like the influence maybe of the clothing and just the culture kind of swinging back to the 90s is like these kids growing up that look at their favorite rappers, look at their favorite, you know, NBA players, NFL players, and they grew up in the 90s, and that's what they talk about. So these kids now, this generation is like cycling back, and they're like, I want to watch all the Disney movies. I want to watch all the...
Yeah, but everything changes too. Sorry, I kind of cut you off
no,
there.
that's good.
Everything changes too when, like, there's, like, Kanye West is older than us, and kids all look up to him. He still feels nostalgia for things he used to see. So when he wears a vintage tee and all the kids who look up to him see something like that, that changes everything.
Especially with Kanye. I mean, he's so powerful in that, you know, he could wear a brand and it'll just blow the brand up.
Yeah.
Right? But now I feel like
Gap.
And I feel like the power is with the NBA players as well. Like I feel like when you talk about some of these younger players wearing vintage as part of their tunnel fits, like you can't even measure that kind of influence.
You're right. There's no stat. There's no measurable. It just, you're like you were saying too. They look cool. Like they have like the most athletic bodies. They're the tall, like cool looking guys.
They can make anything look good.
So
is the thing,
you throw them in a vintage tee, then all the kids are gonna want to look like that. And like it's been wild to see it happen. And some stuff you can almost track, like Justin Bieber wears a Nirvana tee. Then all of a sudden prices shoot up on that. Like you can almost track it as it happens.
And when you look for it, you find it online. Then on eBay, it'll say like
Worn by
Nirvana, worn by, and it'll show the picture of Bieber or Kanye or Travis Scott.
Well, Drake wore that Razor Ramon.
Oh, yeah,
print.
that
I don't know
went
if you ever remember that picture.
I remember that, yeah.
And the next day they were all on eBay for $1,000.
Yeah, that's truly like when you talk about the power of influence, right? Like that truly is it. And I think it's cool. Like again, I go back to it. It's cool. Like let those people be your inspiration. But I can probably think of so many vintage goods, vintage tees that I found for like $10, $15.
All my favorites.
that I want to say, you know, for me personally, is worth more than going to pick up a $500 tee.
It's almost like going like when you get into vintage, you find those weird pieces like that speed the speed hat that you have. But before like vintage was popular, you're just every kid in your high school and in your area, they're going to like that one streetwear store in the mall, and everyone's got the same LRG shirt.
Right, same
Everyone's
fat farm, got the same Rockaware
exact
velour
same.
suit, you know, because
So,
there's
like,
only 3 of them.
In doing that, when like that one vintage piece becomes popular, and all the kids come in, they ask for you have this, and like it'll be 1 week, it'll change, and they're all coming. It kind of goes right back to where it was, where you couldn't be unique because you're also like there's 500 of you in your area shopping in the same store, but.
No, I think that's a really good point. And some of the searches I always go online, you know, I try to look for very like specific things. Like I went on a run recently of just looking for old like Toronto Film Festival tees.
Sweet.
Yeah, like just TIFF tees. And I found, because they did a bunch of collabs with Roots, you know, in the 90s. And they were just these illustrated tees, right? 1993 Toronto International Film Festival. And like, I'll wear it sometimes. My friends will be like, man, where did you get that, man? You just pull it out of the back of the closet. I'm like, no, man. I spent 3 days looking for that. And this is actually a piece that means a lot to me. So please stop disrespecting me. No, but it's like that tee will probably not speak to a lot of people, right? And it's not something that I think is going to be like a crowd pleaser if I'm wearing it in public. But it means something to me. Like I'm trying to recapture this part of an era that I grew up in.
Yeah, sentimental value, right? It might not have a huge price tag, but you can't put a price on what it means to you.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think now. Now you guys making me realize I just have way too much stuff that I don't need.
Hey, well,
Wait,
you know, we know where to
I'm,
bring it.
I'm in the right spot.
Yeah.
You're in
I'm
the right spot.
I'm talking to the exact right two people. There's no judgment
to hear
here.
that.
Yeah, it's judgment-free zone. Like I bought this like vintage like pink Energizer bunny tee.
Beautiful.
And like I'm
love
like
that
so
one.
happy with it. I got it for like $5. I found it on
that
Grailed.
Double-sided?
Yes,
yeah, and it's got the
double-sided.
bunny on
Yes,
it.
yeah, it's got the bunny in the
Yes,
back.
Yeah.
A seller on Grailed was selling it used for like $7. And
I don't even understand
and
how you
I
make
was
money
like-
on shipping.
And I was like, can I pay you 50? No, I didn't say that. I bought it for what he listed for, but it's like those are the ones that actually give me the most thrill.
Yes.
And I think it's a bit of a mix too, right? And then when you feel like maybe you've gotten some value from some of the vintage, then you see a $300 tee that you really want. That's worth it too.
Yeah.
That's worth it too.
Beautiful. I love that. You've talked a little bit about some of the stuff that goes into your pile, like the grails. There's a locks tee. I want to know kind of what are some more hip hop influences for you. What's some of your favorite stuff? Because you've really got to sit down and talk to some major people in the hip hop game. Clips, Raekwon. What are some favorites? And can you kind of tell us about some of the guys you've got to work with?
Yeah, my favorite rapper, and I actually just picked up. So my favorite rapper growing up was Big Pun.
I'm not a player, I just crush a lot.
And, I was just, for those listening, I was just shopping at Vintage 905 before we started recording this. And I noticed that, Gavin and Mike had a Big Pun Capital Punishment cassette tape. And they were kind enough to throw it in to the purchase that I made. I truly do appreciate that. Big Pun was huge for me. I think I was a very big, just East Coast rap guy growing up. So, obviously the Biggie, the Jay-Z, Bad Boy era. You can't talk about the 90s without talking about Wu-Tang. It's wild to me that now Urban Outfitters has like Wu-Tang tees. I'm like, what? Yeah, I'm like, what? Yeah, like these guys are mainstream now. But, for me growing up, Method Man, you mentioned Raekwon, who had a chance to interview for GQ a few years ago, Ghostface, all of those guys. I could keep going, like Noriega, Cameron, obviously, and later with Dipset, MOP. And this is still just my whole Spotify playlist. My friends actually make fun of me because they basically said I froze in time in 2001. Because anytime they give me the aux chord or we're playing music when we're hanging out, these are the beats that are coming out. I'm like, oh, you want to hear this Beanie Siegel album? You don't? Well, you're gonna. So, apologies. But I think a lot of producers growing up too, DJ Premier, even Alchemist. I know Alchemist is still doing it, but man, people got to look up Alchemist's old catalogs.
Right?
Go back and study what Alchemist has done. I think it's great. A lot of these people are getting shine. But yeah, like you mentioned, Gavin, besides covering sports, one of the things coming into the media industry I've always wanted to do, and it's advice that I give to a lot of young writers too, is pursue stories that interest you, right? And to be honest, it ties to vintage too, right? When we're talking about pursue vintage tees and things that are of interest to you, right? I think when you're working in an industry that is so competitive and there's so many people around, your passion does matter. So, one of the things I've always done is try to pitch stories around people that, I enjoyed growing up and people that I want to cover. So being able to sit down with Raekwon and do a Q&A with him, when it was the 10th anniversary, I believe, of Clips's Hell Hath No Fury album. Had a chance to talk to Pusha and Malice, just reminiscing about the album. It was hilarious because I think this was in 2016, I want to say. So this was the U.S., presidential, whole campaign was going on. And I don't know if you guys remember, but Pusha was kind of part of Hillary Clinton's team.
He was doing all the prison reform stuff.
he was doing a lot of stuff. So he was literally in the car on his way to see Hillary Clinton when we did the interview. He's like, we have 15 to 20 minutes depending on traffic. I'm going to see Hillary. He just tells me he's going to see Hillary. I'm supposed to know it's Hillary Clinton. I'm like, is that your girlfriend? He's like, no, I'm just going to see Hillary. I'm like, all right, man. I found out later because he posted on social media 2 hours later a photo with Hillary, and I was like, oh, that insane. Hillary. So
I go see Hillary.
Yeah. But that's how Pusha T rolls. But I think part of that too, and another really cool story I got to do was an oral history about DMX's "It's Dark in Hell Is Hot" album, and obviously rest in peace to X. that was another formative album in my life. And for me, he was in prison at the time. So I was working with his manager, and I got to talk to members of the Locks. I got to talk to Swiss Beats, if I remember correctly, Irv Gotti. And, X was really the last interview that we were trying to get. But it was literally a situation where it was just, we ran up against the deadline and we just couldn't coordinate it because he only had limited time that he could make calls from where he was. So, it's not a big deal, but if you were to ask me like selfishly, personally, like I do wish I got a chance to speak to him, especially because he's not here now. But for everybody listening to this, go if you just look up GQ, It's Dark and Hell is Hot oral history. There's a lot of cool stories in there just about DMX, growing up and things leading up to that album, and just kind of what kind of person he was, right? Because everybody that I talked to about DMX just had such great things because he was just such a caring and passionate person. So yeah, aside from sports, I've always tried to do kind of fun things on the side when I can.
Awesome. For anybody tuning in, we're gonna put all these interviews, all the articles. They're also on your website.
Yeah,
we'll be linking that in the description. We'll put a little graphic up on the video. But seriously, go. What the website's Stephen LeBron?
Yeah, StephenLeBron.com. You're gonna ask me where I got the name from?
I've always wondered that.
I'm so tired. I'm so tired of answering this question on every interview. Can I just bring a clip next time? No, I'm just kidding. So in my 20s, when I graduated from the University of Toronto, I was a business degree major, and I was a chartered accountant. I worked on Bay Street in downtown Toronto for Ernst & Young, the accounting firm. Speaking of vintage, I recently picked up an Ernst & Young t-shirt.
That's cool.
I'm very into accounting and business merch as well.
That's the kind of one that's not a $5,000 tag or anything, but that's got amazing.
Yeah, I bought it off someone who worked there, I'm pretty sure, because there's no way no one else owns that tee. But so I was working in accounting, I was working a 9-to-5 job, and this is when Twitter and Instagram started popping up, and I wanted to get a presence on social, but I also was at work and I was tweeting about work, tweeting about all these monotonous meetings that I was in, PowerPoint presentations that I was setting up. And I was like, all right, man, I'm not trying to lose my job over some tweets. So I'm going to need an alias for social media. So the day I signed up, there was a USA Today story. The headline was Cleveland's LeBron suspended 50 games for steroids. Now, this is 2009, 2010, LeBron's first stint with the Cavs. So when you look at the headline, you're like, oh my God, it's LeBron. It's LeBron, right? But it was a very clickbait headline. You click on it, and it says Cleveland Indians minor league pitcher named Stephen LeBron was caught using steroids and has been suspended 50 games. And I was literally looking for a username, on Twitter, on Instagram, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. There's no way this will be dated. No one's going to ask me to explain this in 10 years on a podcast in Whitby. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to claim Stephen LeBron as my alias, and it just kind of stuck.
Do you think there's any chance a minor league pitcher, Stephen LeBron's ever tried to register a website?
You know what? He should hit me up. I will sell all the copyrights back to you because it's actually your name. Actually, just don't sue me. But a lot of people think it's because I'm a huge LeBron James fan.
Well, yeah, it makes sense.
I thought maybe Steve Nash, LeBron James.
Yeah, something like that. But
that's
I'm
a great
sorry.
story.
Yeah,
that's really very cool.
I'm sorry to disappoint the both of you. It's just literally the most random thing.
No, that's
Yep, that answered my question.
That's better than it just being my favorite player is LeBron James.
Yeah, so
hilarious.
StephenLeBron.com, all the articles we've been talking about, the Clips interview, the Raekwon interview. There's some amazing stuff. There's I think one of my favorites was your interview with Nardwuar.
Your relative Passenger 57?
Yeah, one of my relatives produced the movie Passenger 57, distant relative. He would be at our Passover Seders, and he was maybe one of the first links to Hollywood that I technically had. I couldn't tell you his name.
Oh, that's right.
So StephenLeBron.com.
I forgot about that. You
gotta tell us about that, man.
Nardwuar was a super
legend.
cool.
I have watched so many.
We watched them all.
I mean, Nardwuar goes way back. I remember him doing
music.
interviews. Yeah, I remember him doing interviews with Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love. Like he goes back, and people obviously, I think most people are familiar with Nardwuar's maybe more recent work. Preparing for that interview was a challenge because you're going up against the top dog. Yeah. This is like a heavyweight fight,
It's like having Steve LeBron in studio.
Yeah.
Yo, clip that for me. But this is like a heavyweight fight, right? Like it's a reporter going up against the fucking best reporter in the game. So I was able to dig up some cool stuff that I think he found fascinating about his earlier life, because I reached out to some of people that worked with him when he was in university, like when he was just starting out doing this stuff. And he told me a lot of cool stories. He said, you know, his whole shtick like didn't really land with a lot of people at the beginning, right? Because it's such a different approach to interviewing. And he remembers like trying to do this maybe at college and university, and people would like throw coins at him on stage. Like they were just like, who is this dude? Like he's being all weird right now. So it was cool walking through that with him. And now you're jogging my memory. Like, I don't know if you guys remember MC Jin.
Copies, cause other than that, all y'all other dudes is sloppy. You trying to freestyle by the time you get signed and recruit me and Ticket's grandkids to be in the booth. Y'all dudes is
So he was on Freestyle Fridays, you know, 106 in Park. He was like seven-time. Yeah, he was like 7-time champion, 7 straight weeks on Fridays. He eventually got signed to Rough Rider Records. And obviously, you know, me being an Asian and, you know, he was an Asian American rapper. You know, when I was living in New York, I lived in New York for a little bit in my late 20s. I did a story for GQ where he was back in New York after retiring from his music career, and he was trying to become a stand-up comedian. So I actually followed him around over the course of 6 months to different just stand-up comedy clubs, and he would be performing in front of like 5 people, like a 3 p.m. set, open mic. He would just drop in, put his name in. So that was really fascinating. Like I was riding in the car with him one time and I was like, yo, like, you know, you're MC Jin, right? Like I had a moment where I was sitting with him. I was like, you were in Too Fast, Too Furious. like you were like the biggest thing. And I think it was really cool to see him try to discover a second career. Like it was a very humbling experience for him. And, you know, over the course of those 6 months of, you know, traveling with him and doing interviews with him, I really got to know him as a person. And I think at the end of the day, that's the biggest satisfaction, whether you're talking about doing interviews or you know, writing a book, is sharing people's stories. You know, I think that's the most important thing.
Incredible. Yeah, man. It's funny. I think anybody who's watching who doesn't like remember Jin?
I totally forgot about him. And then as soon as you said the name, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
He was so big.
huge.
Yeah.
He was huge.
I remember I used to watch Freestyle Friday every week.
I mean, that was like a childhood obsession. Like I
wanna
remember
that.
growing up. Yeah,
Oh, Jin.
you watch wrestling, you watch BET, you watch The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Jerry Springer. I was a big Jerry Springer guy.
Yeah.
My parents are like, what's going on, man? Why is everyone always fighting on stage? I'm like, I don't know, man. They're trying to figure out whose kid is that. Like, there's 3 dads on stage right now.
Me at 12, just Jerry.
Exactly.
It's
Price
not
is
his
Right.
kid.
Oh yeah, Price is
Price is
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think kids from the next generation will understand like you had your show you had like your 6 o'clock show, your 6:30
Spoiled
show.
now.
Like yeah, man, they're no on demand.
Now they
like,
just stream everything.
Yeah.
Right? You can stream it anytime. And speaking of, now you're jogging my memory again. Like I recently, last year, picked up a Animaniacs tee that I'm like so proud of, because Animaniacs was one of my favorite animated shows growing up, and I can see Simpsons is super popular now too, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome. This is fun, man. Just going down memory lane. It's like it's always cool talking to people like around the same age, because it's like we have those same experiences of. I remember I'd come home, watch The Simpsons at 5 o'clock. Like 5:30 was King of the Hill on Comedy Central. Then I had to go back to Omni because they had The Simpsons at 6.
I remember I could come home at lunch from school and it was like the soap op, like Days of Our Lives, or Little House on the Prairie, or something like my mom was watching, Jeopardy.
I always used to be so upset when I'd stay home sick from school because the daytime TV was brutal. And I'd always hope there'd be something good that day, but there never was.
But Mondays,
Cops.
I know, Gavin, you can relate to this. Monday Night Raw.
Monday at
that was
9.
Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
Monday at 9. And, you know, that was always my conflict because Jerry Springer would come on at 10. So, like, when Jim Ross or someone cut to break, I'll be like, all right, let me flip to Jerry Springer for like 5 minutes.
Oh, that's awesome, man. It's funny. I was the oldest in my family. So my younger brothers, like, we always had, stricter bedtimes and that. So we would get to watch like the first hour of Raw, and then we'd have to tape it, and we'd wake up early before school and watch the last hour in the morning. And it's like, that was high stress. You know, you had to make sure the recording was going. You had to make sure you had a good tape. It wasn't going to go over anything.
No, people don't understand the stress that 90s kids had to
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Now,
if you missed it too,
it's
it was
just one
gone.
click, right?
Yeah.
You go on Disney Plus, you go on Netflix, you can find anything.
That was the thing too. If you didn't have enough tape or whatever, and it didn't finish recording, that was hopefully somebody at school saw it and could tell you all about it.
If you missed that episode, then you missed that episode. You didn't get to just go back and watch it.
Oh man. Well, we've been strolling down memory lane here, and this has been a ton of fun. I think we should probably talk some Raptors while we got we got an expert in the house.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Or else we're just going to talk an hour on Animaniacs, and I'm not against it.
Now let's do some Raptors.
Yeah, let's do
Awesome,
some
man.
Raptors.
Tell us about you. Tell us about the Raptors show. Your shows before that, everything you kind of done to get to the point where you are now. Because
Yeah, congrats on the new show.
the
too.
show's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, we listen all the time.
Oh no, I appreciate it, man. And
you guys have a great chemistry.
Yeah. So this is me and main host Will Liu on Sportsnet, the Raptors Show with Will Liu. I'm the co-host and producer. I like to say I'm producer first and co-host second. And it's on Sportsnet Monday to Friday, 2 to 3 p.m. Or you can subscribe to it on podcast feeds. And I always say we're the number 1 ranked basketball podcast in Canada right now. So everybody got to check that out. And I appreciate kind of you guys listening.
We've
And
been listening
Yeah, we've
for a
gotten
long
such
time. Yeah.
we've gotten such great feedback from everyone, and I love that because at the center core of it, when I sat down with Will and when I sat down with the Sportsnet team when they brought us on this season to do the show, I told them like, no matter which guest we bring on, no matter kind of what the structure of the show is going to be, we need to make sure we always remember that we service Raptors fans, because at the end of the day, Will and I are just Raptors fans at heart too, right? Like we're very passionate about this team, and we want to make sure that we talk about the Raptors in a way that people feel like they're just listening in on a conversation that they want to hear.
Oh, I think that kind of ties everything we've been talking about with vintage, with
No, it
sports.
does.
It's the authenticity with you guys. You guys aren't just reading off a sheet with stats talking, hey, like this is what happened this game.
Yeah.
It's passion. Like you guys love certain players, you guys, and that translates and people can feel it. And like when people call in, they can feel the genuine.
I want it to be a community, right? Like this should be a community and everybody should be part of it. But going back to your question, so like I mentioned, I had a business career in my 20s. I decided to quit my job because it wasn't fulfilling for me. And I've always wanted to go into sports. I always enjoyed writing. So in about 10 years ago, I quit my job. I moved to New York and to kind of explore this career as a freelance sports writer. And a lot of doors opened up, and I had a lot of people help me along the way. I like to say that I'm not going to take away from the fact that I do believe that I'm really good at what I do. But I also believe in being at the right place in the right time and having people put you in positions to succeed. And all of that has happened to me. So open the doors to work for Slam Magazine, to work for GQ, to write for all these places. And then in 2016, I moved back to Toronto, and I've been more immersed, I guess, in the Toronto sports media scene since. So I was a freelance writer for a little bit, still covering the NBA and the Raptors for, the ESPNs, the New York Times, the GQs and things like that. And then a few years ago, I was brought on by Yahoo Sports Canada and started really focusing on Raptors coverage. And, I'd known Will Liu for a bit, but that was the first time we really kind of worked together and developed a chemistry. And, the first video stuff that we did actually, Raptors related, was when the Raptors won the championship. And I'm sure you guys remember there was that agonizing week of when Kawhi hit free agency. And everybody was like, does he have a shopper's bag, drug mart bag on vacation with him? Wait, is he at Home Depot? Wait, did he visit Niagara Falls? Like, is he leaving? Wait, he's at a Blue Jays game. What's going on?
We scared that man so much.
His kid, he enrolled his kid in school
Yeah. And I can't tell you, like, I think Will more to an extent because he's more of a Raptors focused guy. But the DMs and the messages that we got, I remember my sister hitting me up being like, I heard from a source that the deal with Kawhi is done, that he signed a contract with MLSE, that he just left the building and he's signing a 1-year contract. I'm like, if my sister, who isn't even a sports fan, is telling me that she has a source, this city has gone insane. So anyways, like back to the story, it was like, Yahoo Sports said, hey, would you and Will be up for going to just a diner and like every day this week, we're just going to take all the news and we're going to have you and Will just kind of talk about it. And I think the format they envisioned was kind of like ESPN's Pardon the Interruption, kind of, and just two guys bantering. And it got really great feedback, and it just flowed into the following season where they had us do a weekly YouTube show called Run It Back, where we would do just Raptors recaps, kind of the same vibe. And then Sportsnet reached out to us at the end of last season and asked if we wanted to do this radio show / podcast. And, we both jumped at it. And, obviously it's a bigger platform. We've got more resources, and we're really introducing ourselves, I think, to a bigger audience, right? Because we had a lot of diehards following us, but now we're more on a mainstream platform. And I think it's been super cool because one of the things I always tell people, especially my bosses at Sportsnet, to be honest, is that, hey, if I'm going to come over with Will, you got to just let us be ourselves. Like don't make us come over and start being more buttoned up, or don't tell us like, you should do this or you should do that. Like I'm very confident, especially as a producer now, steering the direction and the vibe of the show. I'm very confident in knowing what Raptors fans want and how they want their content. So, knock on wood, so far it's been good. And I think, to be honest, like mentioned earlier, it being a top-ranked podcast, the bosses don't really bother you when they see the stats, when the numbers are good, when they have sponsors, places, companies hitting them up, wanting sponsorships with the show. So, for everybody listening, subscribe to the Raptors Show, keep it at the top. Otherwise, Will and I are going to start talking stats, okay? We're going to start talking stats. No more speed hats, okay? I'm going to go to Tip Top Tailor, get myself a custom suit, cheapest one, because I got to save up for my Locks t-shirt that I'm still going to buy one day.
International clothes.
Yeah, but I guess that's kind of the story, kind of a long answer to your question. But I think, like we were talking about earlier, is just there's so many Raptors fans now. Yeah. There's so many Raptors fans, and you can tell a lot of them come from the championship.
Definitely, yeah.
I can tell because they're always asking why aren't they winning a championship this year, and I gotta be like, it's a process. It's a process.
It is funny because I do listen to quite a few Raptors podcasts, like some little small ones, and it seems like once the championship, and even this year, all you're hearing, like once the season started, all the podcasts is that my fan base grew by like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. We've been doing this for like 3 years, and then all of a sudden it's just insane.
No,
now.
it's honestly it's great. It's honestly great.
It is,
But sometimes I think, I wouldn't say a downside, but I think a side effect of it is you do have to maybe educate the new fans sometimes that, hey, the NBA is a tough sport. And
always like
the championship was the exception, not the rule.
Exactly. I'm gonna steal that for next week, by the way, on my show. That's a great line.
We'll cut it out of this one.
Yeah.
Put that.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna shout you guys out when I drop it though. So no copyright issues. But like, exactly. Like I have to tell people, like in the NBA, if you want to win a championship, you need a top 5 player, probably 2, to be honest. Like the Raptors were lucky having Kawhi and then a really good team around them, right? Like such a good team. Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol, you mentioned Pascal, Fred.
The whole bench,
the whole bench. They had
Serge,
they had Serge, Norm,
crazy.
and Fred coming off the bench.
Gasol,
Sometimes I go on Basketball Reference every night, basically, at 2 in the morning when I'm really sad. I go to the 2018-2019 team. And I'm like, I cannot believe the amount of talent. And you guys know, OG Anunoby was hurt the entire playoffs. They didn't even have OG. And now he's like their top scorer. So I always think back to the championship team. And I think it's a balance of appreciating that, but also understanding that, hey, now it's a process of seeing how Masai, Nick Nurse, and the team can actually build it back up.
Yeah. No, incredible. It's been really cool watching you and Will grow your brand.
No, I appreciate
from the time you guys were on Yahoo to starting out, and now #1 basketball podcast in Canada, and well deserved too. Congratulations.
No, I appreciate it, and honestly, it's like I'm always very humble about it because, like, you guys know a little bit of my backstory now of my other career, and I'm not even kidding. Like, I know it sounds corny, but there's almost at least once a week whether I'm doing a radio show with Will at Sportsnet or I'm at the arena covering a Raptors game, where I'm just like, yo, I can't believe I'm doing this. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, and I don't ever want to lose sight of that, because I think the minute you lose sight of that, you lose the passion for it. And trust me, at the end of the day, work is work, right? Whether you're working at a vintage store, working, a corporate job, or working in sports, there are things you're not going to like about work because it's work. But I always have to remind myself, like, wow, you're being paid to go to an arena to watch a Raptors game. Like, you know how ridiculous that is when
I've always been jealous of you.
No,
I have a pretty cool job too, but
everybody please be jealous of me. That's the whole point of this podcast. No, but and I think having that perspective does reflect in the way that we cover the team, because we are aware of that, and we know that, hey, there's a responsibility too, right? Like we're given a responsibility to talk about the Raptors every day. And there's a big audience listening. So we have to always make sure, whether we're entertaining or educating people, like we have to be on our A game all the time. So I set a very high standard for myself. I set a very high standard on Will. And, you know, if we're not meeting it, I want to be called out for it. And then I think that's important too.
I have a real quick question. Do you know, has Sportsnet, or back when it was The Fan, did they have a dedicated Raptors show before?
So they've obviously had Raptors coverage with guys like, you know, Eric Smith and Paul Jones and you know, all the rest of the crew. But this is, to my knowledge, the first time they've had a dedicated show to just the Raptors.
Yeah.
Because I think even when Smith and Jones were doing it, it was Raptors and the NBA, right? Whereas this is the first time they've said, we just want Raptors only. And I think it's funny you mentioned that, because I've had a few people reach out to us and say that, like, I can't believe it took this long.
I know, like
for there to be like just a Raptors focused show on Sportsnet, right? And they're a broadcast partner, obviously, right? Like them and TSN, they cover all the games. So I think it's super cool. And listen, like, I'm not gonna say the show is perfect and all of that. We're always trying to get better, but it is really cool to get the feedback that we're getting and knowing, even like just knowing that you guys check it out sometimes. Like it never gets old when people tell me that they're checking out my work.
Yeah, we listen to your voice every week.
It's weird hearing you in here right now.
If I knew, I would have brought, you know, some heavier jokes. Yeah. So, you know, next time let me prep a little bit. Yeah. So. I guess only our producer's bringing jokes today. Yeah. But no, I really do appreciate it, and it's super fun. It is super fun.
Oh yeah, it was actually it kind of like made me think of it when you brought up like that bench of the championship team, and going back and thinking about that. I wasn't completely aware that you had worked on it at the time when I was watching it, but after like looking and you listening to the podcast a little more, how hungry are you?
This is very I don't want it. I don't want it.
What the hell was this? Are you serious? That is not no chicken, man. Daddy!
Surge.
Yes.
Like
yes.
I remember that. I would
he
push
was always
you
showing
all.
me, always getting me to watch.
And I remember
episodes.
that episode with the bench mob in there, and like thinking that was our bench, and that like that's insane.
So for people
tell us
listening,
about working on that.
Yeah,
That's
so for people
incredible.
listening that don't know, like I was I don't know what to say, like a consultant on Serge Ibaka's How Hungry Are You YouTube series. And what had happened was Serge Ibaka's manager, Jordy, had noticed my work, followed me, like seen the way I kind of, you know, approach Raptors content. So he came to me and said that, hey, we're working on this series with Serge Ibaka. Would you be interested in maybe helping scripting with the direction of the show? I was like, yeah, hell yeah.
Yes.
Well, number two, I was like, how much am I getting paid? Yeah, but like, I said yes, obviously. And, you know, some of the episodes that I worked on, the one with Kawhi Leonard, Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol and Pau Gasol came for one episode.
That was a cool one.
Jeremy Lin. Those were the main episodes I remember working on. So the process was, you know, Serge would have a guest, and obviously it wasn't just me. There was a huge team behind the scenes, videographers, producers. They had cooking consultants with Serge. And the main thing I focus on was scripting questions for him with the guests. So if Kawhi Leonard's going to do this interview, what do we want to ask Kawhi about? And how do I want Serge to ask about it? So we would meet at his condo, at his apartment. It's a mansion. It's an apartment, but it's also a mansion. It's a condo, but it's a mansion. You know how rich people are. But it literally his place is the entire floor. Is all I can say.
Especially Serge too.
Yeah,
Like
and it takes like you see the concierge. He brings you up to a second concierge.
What is Serge Ibaka's place decorated like?
It's just nice.
Yeah,
it's just very nice.
Lots of art.
Lots of art.
Sculptures.
Lots of that stuff. A lot of the rooms. I mean, there's like 11 rooms. Like. Half of them are empty because I think he had just moved in and he's traveling on the road all the time. But anyways, we would meet at his place. And we'd go over these questions. And one of the most interesting things I always tell people is that I'm sure for people who watch the show, and obviously, you know, Mike and Gavin, you two you see the personality of Serge come out, right? Because on the court, he's so serious, right? Like he'll choke you. Like he'll fight you. He'll knock you out if you know, you catch him on the wrong night. But then he's just this fun, goofy, like, guy, like in the kitchen having fun. That was a process of bringing that out of him, because there were a lot of meetings early on when myself and some of the producers would be like, hey, why don't you do this? Or why don't you say this? Or ask this really silly question to Kawhi. And he would be like, man, this is going to make me look really dumb. And I'm like, yes. No, but I was like, yes, but also like, do you want people to actually find out who you are off the court, right? Because I think that's the value when athletes do these things off the court. Like, everybody already knows how you are on the floor. If you're going to do a cooking show and you're going to be all serious about it, like, what are you really adding to the table, right? So once he got his millions of views on YouTube, it was a lot easier, right? Like, it was a lot easier to tell him, hey, why don't you pretend you're opening the window because the food smells right now, and then take a little whiff. He's like, yeah, I'll do anything. So like, things changed really quickly. And one of the funniest things is, I don't know if you remember, so this was during the championship season, and they played Cleveland. The Raptors played Cleveland, and this was when Serge got into that fight with Marquise Chris.
Scenario. He looked at him there. Ibaka didn't like what he said.
I'm sure you guys, like, people still post the memes, right? Like, he grabbed him by the neck. Shoved him against the stanchion. So he's playing in Cleveland. The next day, we're scheduled to have like a production meeting about how hungry are you when he flew back to Toronto. I go to his condo, and he's like in a bad mood because he knows he's about to get suspended. I'm literally sitting right there when he finds out, he like gets the email that he's been fined. And this is the time when I realized players make a lot of money, because he got fined one game, so you get fined that paycheck.
Yeah.
It was like a $700,000 paycheck. And I'm like, it took me aback for a second, because he was just like, oh, that sucks. And then he just moved on, right? He's like, that sucks. All right, what are we doing today? And I'm like, you guys are getting paid 6 figures to play like 36 minutes a game. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because these guys are the best in the world, and the NBA makes a lot of money off its players, but it really sometimes puts it in perspective, right?
It's a lot of box tees.
I was just gonna say, we're talking about $900 t-shirts.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Serge is just, he's just brushing a $700,000 fine off his shoulder. But like, it was so fun working on that show. My favorite episode personally was with Jeremy Lin.
How hungry are you, Jeremy? I'm starving. You starving? Yeah. Good. Because tonight I cooked sticky tofu. That smells disgusting. Oh, yeah?
For anybody listening, if you go back and watch that episode on YouTube, you'll be like, how does Serge know so much about like China and Taiwan and Chinese food? Well, it's because I scripted it for him. Yeah. So like, it was a really fun experience. And eventually the show got picked up by Bleacher Report, who partner with them. So they had their own writing team. So unfortunately, I didn't get to kind of keep working on it with Serge, especially after he moved on from Toronto. But I still keep in touch with Serge's manager, so stay tuned. If there's more Raptors off-the-court content coming, you might see my name in the credits. Yeah,
we'll be keeping an eye out. That's awesome. Yeah, we definitely want to ask about that, because we love that show.
I love that show. I've watched them, like, almost every one of them multiple times.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm so happy. I'm so happy for Serge to be able to do that, because I think he built such a special connection with the fans just from that show.
Definitely. And I think that's like a big thing about, I don't know if that happens in every franchise, but the way like the Toronto fans connect to a player's personality, like you see that. You see just like us seeing like Scotty Barnes get out smiling, meeting with the city, and we're like, we love him. Like, he's our god.
He like, we claim him, and we're gonna protect him at all costs. Like, you can't say anything bad about him. I think the best example is Kyle Lowry, right?
Yeah.
Like the way that the city just embraced him and continues to embrace him, even though he's not here anymore. That's the part I love about Toronto fans. Listen, man, like Raptors fans, they know this. Like, they're very intense, right? And that can be good or bad, right?
Yes.
That can be very good sometimes, very bad sometimes. But when it's very good, like, I think you're right, Mike. Like, players go to other cities, they don't get embraced like this.
It seems like they're not as happy when they play on other teams.
No,
even if they're like, I've seen it in their
saying.
faces almost, and their bodies. Like,
we give an insane amount of love to our players too, though. Like, like I remember the day DeMar DeRozan was traded.
I know.
I was at a concert. I can't remember who, but I was at the Budweiser stage, and they put somebody on the screen that was wearing a DeRozan jersey, and just the ovation, like the crowd gave.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy. Like,
you think about, like, I mean, Kyle's coming back in February with the Miami Heat. Like, that's
He'll
going
get-
to be amazing.
Crazy.
It's going to be so amazing.
I hope he gets like a 10-minute standing ovation.
Honestly, he might because you think about like how much love they showed DeMar when he came back, right?
Even
and they still do
for so long.
Yeah,
yeah,
which is crazy.
We
which is
hated him for a
crazy.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what
He
I
came
was.
around.
See, I'm glad I'm talking to you guys about it because when I talked to Will, because like Will's obviously a little bit younger, and he wasn't really around when the Vince stuff fell apart. I always tell him like,
It wasn't always good.
I always
wild story for me personally.
Yeah.
I was at the game where Mo Pete got ejected for
Yes.
slapping Vince. That was my first ever Raptors game.
because
I
the
went
ref
to.
didn't see
He
both
didn't
parts
them,
of it.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then Pete threw his jersey in the crowd. And that was me and my girlfriend in high school.
And we actually we were at the last Vince game in Toronto too.
with
Atlanta.
Yeah, because the way the
because
season ended up getting
of the
short.
pandemic. Yeah, that
That's right,
ended up
yeah.
being his last game.
Yeah.
I know the Raptors had things planned because he was supposed to be there for the third last regular season game of that season in April. So they didn't make a big deal when he was there in January. And no, it's actually a shame. You know, I'm sure obviously there's more important things to worry about, but it is a shame there wasn't that like final send off for Vince. But that's the thing I always tell like younger guys. It's like, I know time has passed and I know that Vince has a huge impact on basketball in Canada and especially Toronto. And I'm never going to take away from that. But I always want to remind people it didn't end very well. Okay. Like he was one of those superstars and we still have them today in the NBA who wanted out and acted that way. Right. I remember he said, I'm going to stop dunking. Dunking's not cool anymore.
I don't want to dunk no more.
I remember the Seattle Supersonics game at the end when he was accused of letting the other team know what play they were going to run. The last few months were really bad.
Oh yeah, remember he was sitting out because he was hurt, and then he was dancing at the Nelly concert. He got
Exactly.
on stage. Yeah, I remember it broke my heart.
I remember when he got traded to the New Jersey Nets, he did a sit down interview with John Thompson on TNT, and he basically admitted that he wasn't trying hard in his final months here. And listen, I love Vince. I watch the dunk contest highlights probably more than anybody, right? Like I love pulling that up. I just always want people to know the full context, right? Because let's not celebrate him, but then let's celebrate him, but let's not forget about everything else.
And also to know that we do embrace him and did embrace him for so long kind of shows like how long of a period we went without having like someone else that we could embrace.
You're so right. You're so
Because
right.
there was no real like.
Oh, it was dark days after that. And then, Chris Bosh gave us a couple of good years. I always have a soft spot for Chris because I always feel like he gets overlooked when people talk about Raptors eras, right?
Yes.
Obviously because they didn't make it out of the first round and they didn't do anything special during his time here, but he lifted them up a little bit, right? He lifted them up a little bit. And then more dark years.
Yeah.
And then obviously,
DeMar.
Masai comes, DeMar, Kyle doesn't get traded to the Knicks. They go on that run. They play the Nets in the first round. Still hate Paul Pierce for those 2 years. And Brooklyn and Washington, I hate. I can't stand him. Yeah, I can't stand him. I always ask people, I ask you guys this. What was worse, losing to Paul Pierce those 2 years, Brooklyn, Washington, or LeBron embarrassing us all those years?
I think it was LeBron years.
Which one hurts the most when you look back now?
Definitely LeBron because it went on like that was more sadness and Paul Pierce was more like.
The Pierce one maybe
you have someone
hurt
to
more.
be pissed off at.
The Pierce one maybe hurt more because I thought we had a better chance.
Yeah.
The LeBron ones were just like
They were
all right,
embarrassing.
Hopefully this doesn't go too badly.
LeBron embarrassed us.
It hurt. It was
Every year
There was
he
no
embarrassed
chance of us ever getting
Well, they started calling us
anywhere.
LeBronto.
Yeah. LeBronto. I was in Cleveland during that series when they were the number 1 seed. They obviously lose the first 2 games. Obviously, we know game 1 at the end when they had like 7 chances to win it. And I'm in the arena in Cleveland in game 3 when OG hits that 3 to tie it.
Yep.
And then of course LeBron comes back down court, hits the shot, and you guys remember the Raptors were the number 1 seed in the East.
Yep.
It was an amazing
number 2
season.
overall that year.
Yeah, amazing team. You remember when DeMar beat the Pistons in Detroit? Like there were so many memorable games, right? That dunk,
the big dunk, all the way down.
And that right there, LeBron hits that shot over OG at the buzzer. Season goes up in flames, right? And that's it. And I still remember just how I was just so angry. I mean, I was in Cleveland at the time too. I was like, damn, like this is tough right now. So yeah, but it's good that we can look back on those now and also say they ended up winning a championship.
Yep.
While we're talking about like big shots, big moments and that, the Kawhi bounce shot, probably the most famous moment in Raptors history.
Is this the dagger?
If that shot doesn't go in, do you how do you think things change? Maybe all these fans we're talking about who came. I mean, it all depends what happens in the overtime.
Yeah, Gavin, I don't want to talk about this right now. Man. What's wrong with you?
It's a real crazy thing to think about.
I know.
Man.
You know what? I've thought about it.
Maybe all these fans that we're talking about who we picked up from the championship.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I've actually thought about this a lot. I don't know if they would have won in overtime. You know, obviously that's a very hypothetical thing to think about. But I will say the Raptors didn't look that good that day. It was really Kawhi who carried them.
Yeah.
Serge Ibaka hit a couple of big threes, but the rest of the team looked kind of shook. They look kind of shook. So let's play along and let's say they would have lost, right? Let's say they would have lost another second round exit after getting swept by LeBron the previous year. Now we know how it plays out. Kawhi would have left, right? Kawhi leaves, no championship. I don't think I'm even here talking to you guys about the Raptors right now because I wouldn't even want to talk about it. Because then it would have been one of those eras where you look back and say, wow, they missed an opportunity to really do something special. And I think there would be a lot of bitterness towards Kawhi too, because, you know, I think there are fans that are, I think, still angry that, you know, he won the championship and he didn't come back. You know, part of me was trying to reconcile that too. Because I'm like, listen, I understand the pull of being home. I understand Toronto wasn't your chosen destination. You were traded here. But come on, man, look at this team. And look at what they did the year after, right?
Do you think he regrets it?
I don't think Kawhi is such a weird dude. I don't think he even thinks about it.
No, probably not.
I think Kawhi's just like, I live in San Diego.
Yeah.
I get a private jet into LA when I play games. Like,
I see him sometimes. Maybe I just want to think he misses Toronto.
You think he's thinking about us?
Because I see him sitting on the bench sometimes. They always pick on him, and he's looking really sad on the bench. I'm like, man, Toronto fans, we had him laughing. We had little meat. We had him
we wanted to give him free food.
We had this quiet guy then coming out in front of the whole city and joking around and being around Kyle and you know you kind of gotta laugh and they pick on you.
I mean, Mike,
I think it opened him out of his shell that no other team or when he was in San Antonio, no one's talking about how funny he is. No one's covering that. No one's sticking up for him. And then in Toronto, the whole country is we love this guy. Then he leaves and he's just
another guy.
That well.
Yeah, he's just another guy.
Yeah.
And I think you were so right, Mike. And you were talking about earlier how this city really embraces its players, right? We embrace Kawhi even though he didn't embrace us, right? He was very at a distance, right? He didn't really say much. That's his personality. But think about during the playoffs, right? The whole fun guy stuff. The Boarman gets paid. I mean, New Balance made tons of money off it. We had Kawhi on a billboard, a Young and Dundas.
Kawhi and Dine.
All of that stuff. And
Coactus.
Yeah, the Coactus. I was going to tell you, there was guys with carrying plants when I walked
hilarious.
out. I was like, what's going on?
We celebrate strangely in Toronto.
We celebrated his laugh. He just had a laugh and that
when
became
he did
iconic.
that at the parade, when he came out at the very end.
So good.
Thank you. And like they said, enjoy this moment, and have fun with it.
Mic drop. That was the best mic.
That was a mic.
That was the best mic. Unfortunately, he dropped it and left. Yeah. That's the unfortunate part. But yeah, I think going back to the topic, well, I don't think he regrets it. But I think when you look at it from a basketball legacy standpoint, right? Kawhi's won a championship in San Antonio, he's won a championship in Toronto, but you don't put him up there with a Kevin Durant or a LeBron James because even though he's such a great player, at the end of the day, fair or not, it's the championships that you get measured on, right? And if he stayed here, I mean, Fred VanVleet already said it in All the Smoke podcast recently, there's no doubt they would have won at least another championship. Without Kawhi, they were a 60-win team during the pandemic season.
And someone would have, other players would have wanted to come and play with Kawhi in a fun
fun
place with a great bench and a great
you
coach
probably
and a
didn't
great
even
GM.
need any other players because you look at how Fred developed, how Pascal kept developing. OG, Serge was still here, Mark was still here. You still had Kyle. You still had Norm.
Crazy.
Who's beating them? Who's beating them? Nobody was beating them. So I think if there's any regrets, I mean, I think about that a lot. I honestly do think about that a lot because Masai built such a great team, and a lot of times, You look at the Lakers right now. Like you look at everybody knows that's the team that LeBron handpicks, right? Like LeBron handpicks the players that they want on the team. He wants Russell Westbrook. We're gonna have Russell Westbrook. When you let players dictate teams, it doesn't always work. And one of the reports that came out was that Kawhi didn't think that this team could win again. He didn't think the Raptors could win again. And to me, that's where he was the most wrong. You know, to me, it's like, if that was really how you made your decision, then you were wrong.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go home, there's nothing you can say about someone who wants to go home, right? Like this is where you want to be.
I get one to live in San Diego over Toronto.
I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I'm never gonna be the guy who's like, he should have never gone home. Like that's a personal choice. But if his decision, and I hope one day we find out and he'll tell us, but like if you really looked at this Raptors team and thought they couldn't repeat, then that was a miscalculation on your part.
Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't many holes.
No, and they were getting better.
Yeah.
All the players got better.
Oh man,
the defense was just
it's
insane.
crazy to think OG keeps developing, Pascal keeps developing, and then
yeah,
and then they're not the one guys. Like then you've got Kawhi as your number one.
Yeah,
Like, it's mind blowing.
And Mike makes a really great point. It's like then players are going to start wanting to come here, right?
Yeah.
Like you think about how the Brooklyn Nets were able to get all these guys like Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge. They would have all come to Toronto.
Exactly.
They would have all come to Toronto.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy to think about the alternate timelines, but I'm just glad we got our ring. That was it's an incredible feeling to really have a championship in Canada.
No, it's like closure, you know?
Yep.
Like you have that and you're always gonna have that. And I know we're joking about the Leafs earlier, but the Leafs need to do Leafs need to do that too.
Well, they've got theirs.
But
they've got theirs.
that's
Not
from
in
like
our
what,
generation.
1967?
Yeah.
They still had one though.
You don't even have vintage shirts from 1967. So. Your studio is literally called 1990 Studios. All right. So no, the Leafs need to win one for this generation because I'm so tired of hearing radio listeners being angry at the Leafs.
It's funny, man.
So who's gonna win one first? The Leafs or the Raptors?
You know, right now I gotta say the Leafs. I think the Leafs. I think the Leafs really like. Listen, I'm not a hockey expert, so please don't take any of this seriously. But the Leafs just need to break through that damn first round thing.
They're like when we had DeMar and Kyle, who we came
round,
first and then losing the first.
We
round.
were talking about like the Leafs could have been in the finals last year, right? So if you're telling me a team got knocked out in the first round, could also have been in the finals, then I feel like they're pretty close.
Yeah,
they're pretty close, right? Like so. All those $11 million guys that they paid, you got to step up when it matters. That's all I got to say.
Can we chat a little bit about the Raptors right now this season?
Of course, yeah.
Kind of the direction they're going. It's kind of a rebuild, but I feel like I look at it as like a rebuild, but a very advanced rebuild.
Yeah.
Like we have a great young team. We have players signed. We are still holding on to a couple of the older pieces, but I think if we look at it as a rebuild, then we're 10 steps ahead of most teams that kind of dismantle and rebuild. Scotty Barnes is obviously a lot better than everyone who booed us on draft day. They're all praising Masai now. Like that's what usually happens. But what do you think about this team? What do you think we need to do next?
Yeah, I think it's such a huge balance this year for people to just keep their expectations in check in terms of looking at wins and losses for this single season, right? Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of frustration. Trust me, I'm frustrated too when I see these guys give up 70 points in the first half, like against Memphis this week, and then you play like an absolutely great team that looks like they could make the playoffs in the second half, right? Like, can we just have that team all the time, right? But this is what you're going to run into when you have one of the youngest teams in the league. And you talk about Scotty, and obviously I know Delano Banton has been a huge surprise, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's like those are positives that people have to remind themselves of when the Raptors are not winning games all the time. Because I think so much of this year is about development. It'd be nice if they made the playoffs, but I'm of the mind that if you're not going to win a championship, if you're not going to be a top 2, top 3 team, let's not win all the games.
I want another draft pick because we've proven that we can use those draft picks.
This
and
is
make
what
them
I'm
work.
saying, right?
Yeah.
You look at the way Masai and the front office, like they turn second round picks into players, right? So like And they've proven with Scotty Barnes that they made the right pick. Nobody's complaining about that right now, right? So
he's front runner for. I know it's early, but
of course
everyone was talking about him on every NBA show. Other players, Kevin Durant,
and then that's like legitimate like credibility, right?
Yeah.
When you have a Kevin Durant praise you, like you know you're legit. So why not get back in the draft? Why not get back in the draft? Get another Scotty Barnes. Why not?
Do you think maybe being back at home this year is kind of giving us there was the bubble year, then the Tampa year. We're back at home. None of these teams they've had their years back at home. Do you think maybe that's part of why it's so we've got that feeling to win now?
I think so. I mean, it doesn't help that they're 2-6 at home too. Like
we're better on the road.
I know.
Figured out the road.
But it's like there's so much excitement about coming back, and opening night they drop an absolute dud against the Wizards.
But then it
was still so fun.
I know. But I think that's the thing to like remind people all the time is like this is what's gonna happen when it's a young team. They're gonna look good on some nights and they're gonna look terrible on other nights. And I think it's so frustrating sometimes because we're so not that far removed from the championship, right? We're not that far removed from seeing what Nick Nurse can do as a head coach, with a really good roster. But I think we just have to be honest and tell ourselves that this is not a perfect team. There's a lot of young guys on the team. And I think for me is, the organization should just make a decision. They've got 7 straight home games coming up as we're recording this. They just finished their road trip. If they're still below 500 in January, do you want to just be a 500 team that tries to get in the play-in tournament? Or maybe start resting some guys and be more strategic about it, right? Let's get back in the lottery, like Mike said. Like, I think about when the Raptors had Vince and T-Mac, right? And obviously T-Mac went to Orlando. We already talked about what happened to Vince. If you pair Scotty with another top-tier talent, that's your next Vince and T-Mac in a way, right? And that's the fastest way, like you mentioned. This is an advanced rebuild, right? This is not the OKC Thunder. This is not the Philadelphia 76ers when they were going through the process, right?
Trust the process.
Yeah. And how did that work out? Yeah. Enjoy those 4 bounces. Enjoy seeing that at Pearson Airport. They've got a mural of the shot at Pearson. But like I think the quickest way back to contention is through the draft for the Raptors. I mean, let's be honest.
For the Raptors,
the Raptors have never been a free agency destination. Literally, the guy who won them the championship left. So, like, that's all you need to know about the Raptors. So, if you can get Scotty, who you basically have for 7 years based on the rules, because you can sign him to the rookie extension. You can bring in another, say, top 5 pick next year, right? If you can land in the top 5, you know what Masai in the front office and the scouting department can do. Like, I trust they're going to find the right guy. Suddenly, you have 2 potential superstar guys at like on rookie scale contracts. Then you're talking, right? Then let's ask the real questions. Is Pascal going to be part of the next contending team? Right.
Okay, so that being said, if we do it in that way, do you think it would be smarter to move some of those bigger assets for, say, draft picks or more younger talent?
I wouldn't be opposed to it. My only thing is let's see how they play together. Yeah. Because there's so many injuries right now. Like I could probably count the number of minutes that the Raptors have been fully healthy, right? Like I want to see how Pascal, OG, and Scotty look together for 20 games. Not 20 minutes, because I'm pretty sure that's I'm pretty sure that's the most that they've played together this season.
Fred's pretty much the only guy who stayed healthy.
Yeah, everyone's been banged up.
At least a couple games. Right?
Yeah.
Fred missed a couple games too.
Yeah, Fred missed a couple games too. So like, I want to see it first, right? Yeah. You know, I think Pascal is it's an explosive conversation because he's got the big contract. There's such expectations on him. And now you bring in a guy like Scotty. And it's kind of weird because it's like, well, looks like this might be Scotty's team in a few years, right?
Doesn't look far off.
Yeah. So where's Pascal going to fit in? But that's why I think this year is so important. Let's get some answers to those questions, right? Can Pascal, OG, and Scotty be a team that you can build around? If you can't, then I'm with you, Mike. Yeah. Let's see. Like, can you get something for Pascal?
Yeah, it's nothing against Pat. Like I've stuck up for Pascal the whole time.
I stick up for Pascal too, but I think if you're being realistic, more and more it's looking like this is going to be Scotty's
And
team.
maybe he's taking a little bit away from Scotty right now.
You guys talked about that on,
But,
on the show
Yeah,
recently.
see, I would push back against that only because I still go back to the fact that they just haven't
Maybe
played
they
together.
haven't played,
They just
yeah.
haven't played together enough, right? And Pascal's just coming back from injury.
Yeah.
But I think the expectations will always be too high for Pascal.
They will be.
It's just how it is because you've won a championship. You look great during the championship run. You look great the year after the championship run. And unfortunately, you make the money
Hey,
of
we
a
paid
max
him. Yeah.
play.
When you pay someone, you put them in the face of your franchise.
This is what I always say. If Pascal, and this is totally unfair, and I recognize this, but if Pascal was making $18 million, he would be the most appreciated player on this roster because you can do it all. You can be a two-way player. We don't expect you to carry us every night. You slot in perfectly. But the reality of the NBA is you have a max player slot, you have mid-level slots, you have guys making $20 million like OG and Fred. Unfortunately, Pascal is not a max player on a winning team, on a contending team. Like I just don't think he is.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So, but I think to answer your question, I think there just has to be kind of, you got to manage your expectations this season.
Yeah.
You have to. And I find it hard for myself sometimes too, because I'm like, you guys look so good sometimes.
I know.
And,
That's
and-
what
yeah, and you guys have a roster of good players. It's not like you're bad, right? So why can't you play good all the time? But it's because they're young.
Yeah.
It's because they're young.
Yeah.
They're fun to
They're
watch
learning-
even when they're losing too.
They're so
sometimes.
fun. They're so
just
fun.
so young. They're
Yeah.
so good on defense.
Yeah.
So good.
But only in spurts.
Sometimes.
Only in
Yeah,
spurts.
no, but
right?
they're learning, right?
Second
It's
half.
a young team. I mean,
Yeah.
there's been a couple games where they played a few in a row and they'll come out looking great, and then you can tell they get tired, like travel and stuff you're not used to, right?
Yeah.
It's all.
But
it
those
is a young
goods,
team
yeah,
picking
the
up.
goods
like,
are glimpses of the potential
the
that
glimpses
these teams
are
have to.
encouraging.
Yeah.
No, but
Which
think
is
about
crazy.
Think about everything Scotty has done so far, right? Like this guy's literally almost averaging like 20 and 10.
It's
And we're not running plays for him, right? He's sometimes
That's
he's only
organic.
yeah,
It
he's
happens,
getting
yeah.
like 7 shots a game. And he's going to have to go through that, right? Like he's going to have to experience these things, like, you know, go up against some of the best competition in the league and all that. But like, I mean, when Scotty Barnes comes back next year, like I'm expecting him to be like that guy already, right? Like I'm expecting this guy to like just take the reins. Like this is your team.
Yep.
And I think they need to hammer that home. I think for me, the only way this season is a failure is if they're like a 500 team.
Yeah.
If they're like a 500 team, they finish 10th, they play like Washington in the play-in to maybe get the 8th seed, I would be like, what's the point?
That's exactly what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, what's the point? But I think this organization is smart enough that everybody should trust that they already have this all mapped out. Like they already have like probably flow charts everywhere in their office of like, if we're this
1000%.
record in December, if we're this record in January, we're gonna rest Fred a little
We're gonna
bit.
play our bench.
yes.
We're gonna play our bench a little.
Yeah. We're gonna play Chris Boucher.
I don't think
48 minutes.
We might win if we do that.
Put-
I love.
Get Malachi Flynn in there.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So like, I think maybe we have to remove ourselves from the wins and losses.
Yes.
Like remove ourselves from like that day to day. Like how are they doing in the standings, and maybe just more focus on the big picture. Like what kind of player is Scotty gonna be by the end of the year, right? What kind of player is Pascal gonna be with Scotty at the end of the year? And even
Ben.
OG, like OG's he's doing great.
Yeah,
he's
balling, man. He's
finally,
having,
like every year, it's been.
I know.
OG's taking that step. He's gonna be that.
But he's
all-star,
taking it. He's
and
taking
he
it.
took it.
He's taking it. But
He
now
was- right
yeah.
before he got injured, I was like,
I know.
this is insane. Hitting like 6, 7 threes.
He
in
looks
a row.
way more aggressive this year.
He does, and,
That's
and
all
he
he
looks,
needed,
He
yeah.
looks comfortable
Yeah.
too, right? Like it's not like he's forcing it, and I think that's a great thing. So, I'm with you on Pascal. I think,
Yeah.
I think unfortunately, I think the best thing for the Raptors is if Pascal plays well and they're able to explore the trade market,
Yeah.
and see, right? Because listen, like for all that we criticize about Pascal, a lot of teams would love to have a player like
absolutely.
Pascal.
He would fit so good on so many
Oh,
teams.
he's
I'm not-
immediate
It's
impact.
nothing about him being a bad player. It's just the fit on the Raptors right now and the future.
The
and like
role,
some good,
yeah.
great players don't always fit together. There's so many super teams. You look at the Lakers. I would love to have most of those players on my
Yeah.
team, but
Brooklyn.
it just doesn't always work. And
Exactly.
it's not always the future.
And I hope when, if Pascal gets traded, whichever team he goes to, like I hope he does great there. Because I know he's just carried so much of this pressure. You can see sometimes it's just a burden on him, So
Definitely.
yeah, so maybe it works out for everybody that he gets a fresh start somewhere else. And the Raptors, like you're right. Like I think it's a great call to say that if they get back in the draft and they trade Pascal and
For
maybe
picks.
get another draft pick. Imagine if they had 2 lottery picks, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Get us a 7-footer.
It is.
Get us a
It is hard.
Yeah.
I do understand. It is hard removing yourself from the wins and losses.
Yeah.
Toronto, we've talked about it. We're such an immediate gratification city. We want wins. We want to see.
We're
immediate
passionate.
development.
We're passionate.
It's hard for us to sit back and say,
I know,
let's take
I
a
know.
year off.
Yeah, but this is what I got to do. Like,
it is better.
This is what I got to do on my show every day.
You're talking people off ledges.
No,
all
I
day.
always have to remind people, and like, I'll never say like, oh, we shouldn't analyze them game to game because then I'll lose my job. Because that's actually my job. But like, like we have to just like take like kind of a more big picture view.
Yeah.
Like we have to. And trust me, I get lost in watching these games too, right? Like we're recording right now. Like they played Indiana last night. And I was just so mad at them.
That's a tough one.
I was just so mad. I'm like, you're better than
But
Indiana.
the game before that was amazing. They came out in the second half.
And
just
we've already
looking-
beat Indiana.
I know. I know. And I'm watching the game and I'm just like shouting at the TV. I'm like, you're better than them.
Those are the frustrating ones.
Yeah, like you're giving up all these offensive rebounds. Like, there's just effort plays, all of this stuff.
The rebounding has been
That's
the
been
most
an issue.
frustrating
Yeah.
thing to watch all season for me.
So like, but listen, like, Masai's honestly, probably the best sports exec.
Yep.
Across all sports, I would even put him up there. I'm a pretty big fan of Nick Nurse. I think I still trust
me
Nick
too.
Nurse. You need to give him good players. Like at the end of the day, a coach can only do so much. So the infrastructure is all there. And I really do trust this organization to bring them back in the right direction. So, but it's not going to be this year. It just won't.
Yeah.
It just won't.
Yeah.
But we're getting there.
We're getting
trending
there.
in the right direction.
No, we're trending, and for this year, focus on the Leafs.
It's a lot easier. Yeah.
Oh man,
The Leafs got this.
Yeah.
The Leafs got this. I believe in that.
That's awesome, man. It's been awesome getting to have an expert in here and pick your brain about the Raptors.
It's been awesome being called an expert. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
No, you're a very humble guy. You're 1,000% an expert, and it's been really cool getting to ask you some questions. Let's. I know our producer here. He's got a family dinner, so I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're a busy guy, Alex.
Yeah.
Family's not that important. No, but I'm
We're
just
talking
kidding.
Raptors here.
Show some of my parents.
Let's talk about you're a published author, man. Let's talk about your books. You've got We the Champs.
Yeah.
You co-wrote that. We've got Cover Story, your
sure,
new
yeah.
book right here.
Yeah.
And you're working on something right now.
I am,
Yeah,
yeah. So Raptors related. So Cover Story book I just released last month. Everybody should definitely check it out. It's like Gavin mentioned up top. It's about the NBA and modern basketball through just iconic magazine covers, Sports Illustrated, Slam. I interviewed over 100 people, just editors, writers, people involved, photographers as well. I think it'd make a super cool holiday gift, for any diehard hoops fan. But yeah, I'm currently working on a Raptors book, tentatively titled Prehistoric. It's going to be about the first year of the Toronto Raptors and how the Raptors came to Toronto. And I'm actually pretty deep into that right now. I just finished, I think, my 100th interview like last week. Yeah, so I've talked to half of the roster from the very first year. So people will certainly remember names like Damon Stoudemire.
Yeah.
I talked to Oliver Miller the other day, Tracy Murray. So telling their stories. I talked to the head coach, Brendan Malone. Isaiah Thomas is going to be in the book. A lot of the front office. And I've also talked to a lot of people actually in the community, just basketball communities, because one of the things I want to do with this new book is highlight just what a professional basketball team coming to Toronto means to the Chinese community, to the Jamaican community, to the Sikh community, and all of that. So, that book is scheduled to be released in 2023. So I'm going to be working on this rest of this year and next year. And, as proud as I am of Cover Story, I'm really even more excited about this next one because this one's more personal to me, because I grew up in Hong Kong. My parents and I and my older sister, we immigrated here in 1992. And I was a Raptors fan from day one. And I've always wanted to tell the stories. And we talked about Vince Carter a lot, right, earlier. I feel like a lot of the younger generation, we talk about kids coming in here being like, oh, I love Led Zeppelin and stuff, right?
Yeah.
When they talk about the Raptors, you talk about Vince Carter first,
Yes.
right? But all respect to Vince. And I know as I'm realizing, this whole podcast makes me sound like I've been disrespecting Vince. Yeah, I'm a Vince hater. But it didn't start with Vince. It started with Damon Stoudemire. It started with games at the Sky Dome.
Yep.
It started
Yes.
with the Raptors beating the 72-10 Bulls when Michael Jordan was there, right? So I'm going to capture all of that, and probably there's a lot of stories that's going to be in this upcoming book that people just have never heard about, like even if you're a diehard Raptors fan. So I'm super excited to put that together. I really appreciate the two of you for giving me this platform to kind of just talk about that. So I'm really excited. You know, working on books is it's become this kind of new thing for me. And you know, for me, having done so much of my sports media career digitally and online, I'm sure you guys can attest to, there's so much content online, right? And sometimes it's very fleeting, right? You can post an IG story and it's gone the next day. To be able to kind of write books, I'm still a little bit more old school, like to be able to see it in print, to be able to know that, you know, even when I'm gone or like in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, people can still check out the books. Like it means a lot to me. So, you know, I guess to tie it back, you know, I hope in 100 years, you know, my books are vintage, and then people will be selling it at vintage stores.
Used bookstores, little used bookstores.
Yeah, hopefully not for $1. Yeah. Hopefully it's closer to the Locks T-shirt. Maybe not that much, but you know, let's not find my books in the dollar used bin, please.
Oh, that's incredible, man. I mean, you just got. You touched there in 92, you said? You guys immigrated over?
Yeah, came here in 92. And I remember the Blue Jays. I was like, because I didn't even know baseball. Like, grew up, I knew basketball. Like, baseball wasn't a very popular sport in Asia where I grew up. And I remember turning on the TV, they're like playing, you know, the Phillies, you know, and obviously the Braves and Phillies. And I was like, what's going on? Like, we're winning? And I'd like go to school and everybody would be so excited. And I didn't know what was going on because basketball was still like my favorite sport.
It must be pretty incredible, man, for, you know, a kid who immigrated here, picked up sports right away to see your name on a book now.
Yeah, you know, I always say too that, you know, the only validation I want is from my parents. Like to be honest, like you know, my parents, you know, they work so hard to be able to provide for my sister and I, you know, growing up and giving us this new opportunity here in Toronto. And you know, not to get like super deep into my story or whatever, but it's like when I switched careers, my parents weren't too thrilled about that, right? Because I had a very stable job working in accounting. And I told them, you know, I'm moving to a new country. I'm moving to New York and I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I'm just going to try to figure it out. My dad wasn't very thrilled with me, right? Like he's like, you're throwing away, you know, all this, you know, that you went to school for and things like that. And now that being able to kind of hand this book to them and then seeing how like thrilled they are. And they're like, you know, like Chinese parents, Asian parents in general, I feel like they're not the best at expressing themselves in terms of like telling you that you're doing great or like giving you a compliment. And like my dad has never said like, oh, you know, I'm really proud of you about this or your career and things like that. But I can tell, right?
Yeah.
Like I can tell. And to be honest, like people want to celebrate my books, like, you know, big publications, big podcasts, or even doing this with you guys. Like, all of this means a lot to me, but what means the most to me is knowing that my parents are proud of me, and I think that honestly, like, that's all that matters to me. Yeah,
well, I think you've succeeded in that.
Yeah. But you know, we got to keep going.
Keep going.
Got to keep going. Got to keep going. Can never be, especially in this industry. You know, can never be like satisfied, you know, because there's always
people.
It's a competitive field, and there's always things that we can get better at. So, no, I really appreciate you guys for kind of giving me this platform and helping to promote the book and everything like that.
Yeah, we'll continue to do it through the shop and stuff. You're a friend of ours, so.
All right,
we'll
I think
help each other out.
I get a 90% discount. Yeah. Let's just get that on air right now.
Friends and family.
Oh, wow, crickets! It's crickets right now. Oh my God,
man. I just wanted to do a couple little fun, quick ones.
Yeah,
do you got anything else you wanted to ask, buddy?
Go ahead, man.
Cool, man. You've got to work with like so many cool people. The interviews you've done. Is there anybody that like? Is there anybody that you've been really intimidated meeting? What like speaking with Kevin Garnett, something like that's got to be.
Yeah, so the Kevin Garnett, okay, I have another example for you, but I do want to tell you this Kevin Garnett story.
Perfect.
So I met him at All-Star Weekend a few years ago in Charlotte. And so he was sponsoring something for N1 basketball. And the funny thing is, like, I obviously know KG. Like, I watched KG growing up, all of that stuff, as the two of you did. But I had a producer with me who was setting up, like, the mics and coordinating the interview. He's not into basketball. Like, he didn't know basketball at all. So when he was miking up KG, he started asking KG, he's like, what's N1 basketball?
Oh, no.
And now, you guys know how intense KG is, right? He is the exact same when you interview him in person as he is on the court. He's like, I can swear on this, right?
Yeah, go wild.
He's like, what the fuck you mean what N1 is? And I had to step in. And I had to step in and be like, hey, sorry, man. Like, he's new to sports. Like, he's more like technical. And like KG was just like so heated. But luckily, like I had met KG before, so he knew me. So it didn't kind of like derail it. So I got to say, I wasn't intimidated by KG, but I do have a fun story for you. One of the first athletes that I interviewed was Chandler Parsons, who used to play on the Dallas Mavericks. I was invited to hang out with him during New York Fashion Week. Now, I know you guys called me a fashionable guy, and I am, but I'm not a Fashion Week guy, as you guys can tell. So first of all, I got invited. They were like, hey, here's where Chandler is staying at the hotel. He's going to go check out a couple of stores. He's going to go for a party. You just kind of shadow him, right, for the day. So I'm freaking out because I'm like, what am I supposed to wear? Like, if he takes me to like a red carpet thing, I got to dress up. So I go to Uniqlo, my favorite basic store, sort the price from low to high, and then buy the cheapest dress shirt and cheapest blazer I could find just so I could look proper. I show up. He's like, just come up. I text him. I'm like, want to meet me in the hotel lobby? He's like, just come up, man. I come up. He's super chill. And by super chill, I mean he opens the door. He's wearing his underwear only. He's watching ESPN. He's like, hey, man, I'm just getting ready. You mind chilling? I'm like, fuck, I guess. So I'm just like sitting there, right? He comes out of the bathroom with his supermodel girlfriend, who I later Googled and realized she had just broken up with Leonardo DiCaprio. So this is like supermodel, like level 1, right? And they're just chatting me up. You know, I don't even know if I ripped the tag off my Uniqlo blazer. I'm like, yeah, what are we doing?
Return this after.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, the tag's right in here. He's like, and by the way, he pushed me from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Like I was supposed to meet him at 1. So here I'm just a clown in like a blazer walking around the city in New York, just killing 5 hours. I go meet him. He's like, let's just go to the hotel bar, do the interview, let's chill, right? So it's the 3 of us. And I'm like super intimidated because this is one of the first interviews I did, and this was for GQ. And I'm like, oh, this is such a big assignment. Like, I can't mess it up. So we sit down and he's like, what are you drinking? I'm not a very sophisticated dude. You hand me a beer, I'll drink it like today. Appreciate you guys.
Shout out Town Brewery.
Yeah. And I'm like, whatever you're drinking. So 2 minutes later, we're drinking a triple Red Bull and vodka. Okay. And like, I'm a lightweight. Okay. Like, I'll admit it. I drink half of that, like I'm done. Like I can't even find my recorder or anything like that. Meanwhile, he's chatting me up. We're doing the interview. His girlfriend is right here. His other friend who like designs like bespoke suits comes. So it's like the 4 of us sitting there. It's like the most awkward thing for me. We do our interview in this super loud bar, which I could barely listen back to after. Somehow I did it. And he's like, hey, what are you doing after? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe just, hanging out, see what you want to do. He's like, yeah, man, I'm just texting Blake Griffin and Kate Upton. Like, do you guys want to come and hang? Mike's going to get mad at me. I was like, nah, man, I'm going home.
Oh, my God.
I'm not that guy. I'm just like, I got what I needed for the story. And I said, hey, you guys have fun. Like, I'm literally just like, can't even walk straight. Just call an Uber and go home back to my place in Brooklyn.
The triples were hitting.
So the funny story is, I do this Q&A with him. We publish it at GQ, and my editor puts in the title, it says like drinking like Red Bull and vodkas with Chandler Parsons at Fashion Week. Now you guys know Mark Cuban is the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, right? I get a call the day that the story publishes, and it's this woman on the line, and she's like, hey, I forgot her name. She's like, hey, is this and this? I'm the assistant. I'm Mark Cuban's assistant. Can you hold on 1 second? And Mark Cuban wanted the headline of the story to be changed.
I guess, yeah.
Because he's like, I don't want my athletes, my players to be depicted as like just like being wildly drunk during the off season and all of that stuff.
And you said no.
Well, I didn't say no. I was like, Mark, I'm getting paid like half a Locks t-shirt for this story. like I don't control like GQ. Like they just gave me this assignment. So I think I handed him, or my editor
Sure.
reached out to him. I think my editor was also like, no, fuck that. Like, we're just doing, like, this is what you did. So we're just going to tell the story. So intimidated, I think that would really be it. In terms of like,
a surprise call from Mark Cuban.
yeah, intimidated, but even just intimidated about the assignment. Because that was one of the first times that I was kind of like in this like sphere of like just athletes, right? So like if you fast forward when we talked about Serge Ibaka, by then I had so much experience. Like I was never intimidated around like Serge, and I think athletes appreciate that too. Like they feel that energy. Like I'm able to tell Serge like, no, like you should do this because it's good for you. Or if he's like, oh, I don't know about this question, I'm like, no, I do. Like Raptors fans want you to ask Kawhi this exact question, so you should ask it. So I don't get intimidated around athletes anymore is what I got to say. I think I'm very like desensitized to it. I think very early on I would be just very in awe. Like even when you walk into an NBA locker room and you're like, oh my God, LeBron is sitting right there. Like, I'm like, I can't believe this, right? Or even Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. Like when Kobe Bryant was here during All-Star Weekend in Toronto for his last All-Star, right? Like he walked right by me, like, you know, and we walked in the same elevator. I was like, all right, cool.
Does that kind of hurt sometimes that you're desensitized?
That it's worn off?
Yeah.
Yes, I do joke to my friends because I have a lot of friends who don't work in sports who are like, oh man, what you do must be like so cool, right? And I'm always like, nah, I'm over it. Yeah. Like I'm over it. And I don't mean it in like a condescending way or arrogant way, but I think you just can't help it. Like when it becomes work, it does strip some of that like fan excitement that you used to have. And yes, to answer your question, I do kind of hate that a little bit because I do miss when I was just this like innocent fan and just like in awe of everything. And sometimes too, it's like, sometimes I'm like, yo, don't meet your heroes too, because not every athlete that you think is great is actually great in terms of an interview subject or a person, right? So I think once you're like immersed in the scene, it does strip a lot of that joy away. But yeah, intimidating, I think that's the one. That's the one. There was another one when, and I know your producer got to run, but like, there's another one where I was invited to a studio listening session with Action Bronson.
Whoa.
Sick.
Yeah.
Man, you're a New Yorker through and through.
Yeah. So then, I mean, I remember walking into this studio and there was just bulletproof glass like at the receptionist. And I was like, this doesn't feel right to me. Like, I don't feel good. And I remember just sitting in the studio, and it's the first time I've had this like live listening party, and they're just like blasting songs from like his album. And I just felt so weird, maybe more weird than intimidated, because I'm like, what do I just bob my head? Because I'm like, yo, this track's not even, I'm like, yo, this track's not even that fire, man. But I'm like, I guess I just gotta keep bobbing. So like after every song, I was like, yo, that was sick. And I was like, yo, that beat, damn. Like I just didn't know what to say, right? So I think so much of the intimidation stuff is just first time reps, like first time being in a studio, first time hanging out with an athlete, and then it does wear off after a while. So sorry for turning your rapid fire into such a long answer.
Dude, these I've it's been great picking your brain, man. I really enjoy the answers. Do you have a dream interview?
Yeah, that's a really good one, man.
Because you got to talk to so many amazing people.
Yeah,
right?
but there's still so many people that I want to talk to. I think it would probably be maybe Ghostface, honestly.
Cool.
Like, I would honestly say Ghostface, because I'm trying to run through, like, unfortunately, a lot of my favorite rappers have passed away. But I got a chance to talk to Raekwon, so that was one of my favorites. Pusha as well, obviously. Yeah, I think it has to be Ghost. Cool. Like, I've had a chance to talk to Cameron, which was super cool. Yeah, I think Ghostface would be the guy. There's probably a lot of other guys, even a guy like Just Blaze.
Cool.
Like, I'm super interested in like producers, like just what they do, because I feel like they're in the studio so much. Like, they have the best stories. Like, and at the end of the day, it's about the stories. Like, it's the stories that you want to bring out. In terms of athletes, I can't really think of too many, to be honest. Like I can't. And it's not because I've talked to everybody. I think it just goes back to the fact that I know that like a lot of athletes just aren't that interesting.
Yeah.
Like, they're just not.
No one outside of basketball, like a big figure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, but no, you
There isn't like
that's a good question.
like a Barack Obama or somebody on like is there like a dream
Yeah,
unlimited budget?
See, the way when I think about like the Barack Obamas and like those really true like A-listers, I just think the environments would be too controlled.
Yeah.
They would make me email the questions
Mark
before.
Let's just say hypothetically, scrap. You've got your show is the number one in the world.
Yeah,
any celebrity
man.
wants to get onto the Raptors show with Lilu,
Man.
and there's a list of anybody.
Yeah.
They're saying go
You
through
know
and pick out
what?
who
You know
want.
what? I would actually give is an obvious answer, but I think it'd be a great interview if all those conditions were met. Me and Vince just sit
That's
down
great.
one on one. Like me and Vince, like no holds barred. Like let's talk about the good, let's talk about the bad. And I don't want any BS. Like I want to know how you truly felt at the time and how you truly feel now.
We want that too.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great gift to Raptors fans.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
And final, unless you got anything else you want to add, buddy?
You go ahead.
All
man.
right, final question here, and I want you to settle an argument between us.
Oh no, don't.
Don't put me between the two of you.
Can you tell me
I know
Goddamn.
why
Goddamn.
Uncut Gems is such a great movie?
I know why.
So who likes Uncut Gems and who
love
doesn't?
it.
And you're not a fan?
No, I know. That's why he brought up Kevin Garnett. He was trying to segue into Uncut Gems. I knew it.
You know what? And I also like to say Adam Sandler would be on my list then.
Oh, that's a
of
great
people that I
guess.
want to interview.
And it's,
So,
I love Adam Sandler.
Yeah. Uncut Gems, okay. This again kind of like goes back to Speed, the movie. Started kind of as a bit for me. Like I honestly love pulling the screenshots for memes because there's just one where he says, like this is how I win, or I'm so sad right now, and it was great for me to use on social media. But I think I really like the Safdie brothers. I've loved all their movies that they've done, and I think Uncut Gems for me hits a couple of sweet spots for me. Number one, obviously the basketball tie-ins. Number two, I love gambling. Like growing up as like an 18, 19-year-old kid, I remember hitting the casinos. I remember when poker was really big in the early 2000s. Like I was really into poker. So it hit the sweet spot for me. And I think I've always respected Adam Sandler as an actor as well. You think about movies even like Punch Drunk Love and like some of the maybe non-traditional roles that he's done. I actually think he gave such a great performance in Gems that made the movie. And then you throw in Kevin Garnett, who I thought was really good. And it's just the hyper like adrenaline rush of that movie. Like it's so chaotic. And I think the Safdie brothers obviously did that on purpose. There would just be voices in the backgrounds of every scene. Like it was never just the
such
people talking.
anxiety-inducing.
Yeah, it was just anxiety inducing. And people always ask me this. They're like, so you're telling me the second or third time that you watched it, you felt the same thrill? I'm like, yeah, it's my favorite. It's my favorite movie to just throw on in the background. And they're like, that is the opposite of a background movie.
Yeah.
They're like, how do you expect to get anything done when that's in the background? I'm like, well, I guess we're just built different. All right. Like we're just built different. We're just built different. So I'm never gonna tell anybody, what movie they should like or what movie they shouldn't. But I think it ties it all back to the whole like personal connection with vintage, with sports and everything. Uncut Gems just hit so many of these personal spots for me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't quite settle the debate, but
That's it. Yeah. I'm not here to
perfect.
settle debates.
No.
If you guys don't know, I'm actually a politician,
He's gonna-
man. I deflect questions like crazy.
he's gonna break up our friendship. Well, that's you got anything you want to add, Mikey boy?
Oh, I think just thank you so much. Like we truly have listened to you
I
and
really
followed
appreciate
you, and we've talked before, like vintage, and
Yeah.
it's just cool to sit down and talk with. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it, man. And whenever you guys want me back,
Definitely,
like
yeah.
if any excuse I can to come to Whitby and just like throw money on vintage.
Yeah, it goes both ways too. If you ever want
Yeah,
us on,
Oh yeah. No, you know what?
we'll come up to the studio.
No, you
I'm
guys.
just kidding.
No, you guys joke, but like I do have some ideas of like doing some of those kind of more different episodes about vintage and about more of like the culture of like the Raptors community. So. You joke, but the invite will be coming.
That's awesome.
I'm serious.
We have a ton of love for you. We have a ton of love for your show. The number one basketball podcast in Canada. New books out. Just congratulations on all the success, man. We really just can't wait to see what's next for you. And it's been a pleasure having you on today, man. Getting to pick your brain.
No, really appreciate it, man, and hope it was worth your time, Mike, to come and co-host.
It was worth my time. Finally,
that's so good. All right. Thank you to my co-host, Mike.
Yeah.
My business partner, my best friend, killed it here. Our guest, Alex Wong. from Sportsnet 590, the Raptors Show with Will Liu. Check out his book, cover story. We're going to be putting up all his info in there. Go to his website, read the articles, guys. If you like hip hop, if you like basketball, if you like just good content, get there, check it out. It's been a pleasure having him in the studio today. Thank you to our sponsor, Town Brewery, for providing us with the beers. Go to their website, townbrewery.ca. Use the promo code Gavin at checkout. Get 10% off. It's been a pleasure having you guys in. This was a ton of fun. Until next time, guys.